Hello, my name is Jeremy Nguyen, and I'm a New Yorker cartoonist.
Today we're talking about how to draw a city.
I moved to Bushwick in 2011 and started drawing this comic strip called Stranger Than Bushwick. I never really thought about what drawing a city or a neighborhood was like until I started doing these cartoons. I personally think that a city is way more than its buildings. You can draw its people and you're still drawing the city. Capturing the details of this city has certain traffic lights or the city has certain bushes and plants in it. I think that's almost more important.
So why don't we look at some specific examples of how to draw a city?
I love this cartoon. I think it's one of the weirder ones I've done. This is a sword swallowing cartoon where there's a guy in the store, swallowing a sword, and the clerks are at the counter saying this guy comes in all the time, spends hours putting swords in his mouth, and never buys anything.
Tell me about how you sort of built this space.
I feel like I really couldn't sell you on the location of this place without putting a ton of swords, a ton of daggers in it. Even the doormat has a sword insignia on it.
I'm curious how often when you're drawing cartoons you turn to YouTube and Google Images.
I look at reference all the time. I look at obviously Google Images. Sometimes if you look up a sword swallower on Google, they'll show you stock images. But then if you go on Pinterest, they'll show you an actual sword swallower who has a blog and an Instagram account. You could go back and forth. Do you want the Halloween costume version of something? Or do you want to go as authentic as you can?
Sword swallowers are kinda just rare to see, and you might think you have one in your head, but what does the sword swallower even wear? What is the posture of sword swallowing? Having these arms raised up was actually a challenge. As I was drawing the sword swallower and wondering about what he wore, I thought about what if a sword swallower had no shirt on. That seemed a little too bizarre to put into a cartoon, so at least I gave him a little vest that, yes, allowed him to still show off his abs, but he was still technically wearing clothes as he's out and about shopping. Then I drew some pants on him, and when I got down to his feet, I decided this guy, he's not going to have any shoes on.
So I want to talk about this other cartoon. There's sort of this crush of people inside dining. The caption is, "That table is yours once that party decides to move to the suburbs." This is such a complicated sort of Renaissance scene almost with all of the movement across it. How would you suggest someone go about starting to try to draw something like this?
You want to stage the characters reading it like a book, left to right. So you have this setup on the left side, and then you have this punchline on the right side. So of course I have this couple coming in, and that begins this whole narrative, and then they look out into the sea of what tables can they take. It is a complicated affair to balance this many characters in a cartoon as well. I wanted to make sure that there was a rambunctious, crazy Asian child, because that's basically how I was as a child. I think one of my favorite characters is this angry waiter who has to deal with this all the time, so that's why he's scowling. And then this hostess, she's just fantastic. She's got the best fashion, and this is the first time I employed gray tones for a cartoon, and it was definitely necessary just to delineate, what's in the foreground, what's in the middle ground.
What I like to do when I have a lot of characters is to use depth to draw the viewer's eye where you want it to go. Most of your cartoon will be taking place in the middle ground, and for today I am drawing a restaurant tent. All these restaurants in New York have these tents that are being put up in the parking lanes. In the foreground I have some people drawn. What's great about the foreground elements is that they can help create a sense of depth by having something close to the camera like this. In the background, you can employ something called atmospheric perspective to not have to draw that much. That could be the background is just a few lines. And I'm going to employ a lot of gray tones to create an environment where we're looking past the dog walker and the bicyclist into the subjects in the middle ground. And in this particular scene, there's this couple having a drink, having a little bit of wine, and one of them says, "It's missing the notes of car exhaust, cigarette smoke, and sewage steam that I'm used to."
I really love the minutia of everyday life, the mundane of everyday life. That's where I feel like I thrive. So for this time to be like so weird and so strange already and so surrealistic, you know, in real life, it's hard to transfer that surrealism into a cartoon.
But you did make a very surreal cartoon. Do you want to describe it?
Yes, so we have two characters who are wearing masks. They notice that there's a whole crowd of people wearing masks that are made of different pastries and different breads, and they say everyone's baking and sewing again.
You grapple with something here too that a lot of the cartoonists have been having trouble with, which is the construction of a New Yorker cartoon. There's usually one person speaking and the typed caption is what they are saying. But now it feels almost irresponsible, I think, for people to draw, especially outside in a crowd, like anyone without a mask on.
Yeah.
And so this guy's being a little bit of an asshole, like pulling out his mask to make this quip.
That was the only solution I could think of, you know, for someone to be indicating that they're talking.
So for this bread mask cartoon, I knew that I was going to be drawing a lot of people. I love drawing crowds. People are just so much more fun to draw than a park background. I don't always want to draw a sidewalk or buildings. Of course, I wanted to draw all kinds of different pastries and buns. That was the entire joke for me. Then I drew these characters in the background who had to be commenting on the scene, of course. I filled in one character, the speaking character's shirt black, so that your eye is drawn towards him right away. After I draw out all the characters in the scene and the backgrounds, then I go in and add a gray tone to the back to sort of give this some sort of framing device as well as a composition. And I always like to frame the speaking characters in the white. They sort of break the horizon line, and then I just add text, and there you go. Everyone's baking and sewing again.
One of the things I love about this cartoon is just how viscerally enticing it is. It's the rare cartoon that really makes you suddenly like smell a croissant.
Yeah, that croissant. I don't think I've drawn a better croissant than that.